Welcome to our discussion of the relationship of mitzvot that are interpersonal and mitzvot that are between us and God. We know that in this parshat Vaetchanan, we have the Ten Commandments. In the Ten Commandments, pretty much you have a division of the second commandments are clearly between us and between people, interpersonal. Don't kill, don't steal, commit adultery, jealous. And then the other ones are clearly with God, that there's one God, we shouldn't have other gods, shouldn't take God's name in vain. It's all about God. Of course, the honoring parents straddles between them, and that's always very interesting. But there's clearly some sort of distinction. The other famous place where the distinction is made between interpersonal and mitzvot between us and God is the famous Mishnah in Yuma. We just recently finished Yuma, and that Yom Kippur, that sins between us and God, Yom Kippur can atone. However, you can't atone for interpersonal sins until you ask for permission, for forgiveness from your neighbor. So that Mishnah establishes there's a difference, in certain realms at least, between interpersonal mitzvot and mitzvot with God. Now, obviously, all the mitzvot are from Hashem. So in that sense, they're all one. Every mitzvah I do, whether I put on tefillin or eat kosher or I give charity, it's all because Hashem says so. So in that sense, they're all the same. That's obvious. The question is, what is the philosophical root? What is the halachic root of the mitzvot? Do they have the same root? Mitzvot that are interpersonal and mitzvot that with God, do they have a different kind of a backing or background or something like that? Let's take a look. So a good place to look is the Gemara in Shabbos, famous story of Hillel. Let's take a look at it on Shabbos Lamed Aleph, Amud Aleph, 31a. Famous story. There was a guy who came in front of Shammai. He wanted to be converted on one foot, and the rabbi kind of kicked him out with a big stick. Came to Hillel, and he converted him. As he converted him, he said to him, "Look, whatever you hate, don't do to your friend. That's the whole Torah. The rest is just commentary. Go learn it." Now, at the same time, it's true that there's a marketing element here. He's trying to sell Judaism to this person, but surely the rabbi can't lie. In order to convert someone, you need to have a strong foundation of what Judaism is. And apparently he's telling him that the whole Torah is based on this idea. Now, there's a big problem with this in terms of interpersonal versus laws with God. Because if we think about interpersonal laws, that's great. Whatever you hate, don't do to your friend. That summarizes most interpersonal laws. But what about laws that are not interpersonal? Laws that are between us and God. So Rashi says as follows: whatever you hate, don't do to your friend. So he says, who is your friend? Your friend is God. There's a verse in Mishlei that says, your friend and your father's friend, don't abandon him. In other words, if you have a friend who's a friend of the family, friend of your father, friend of you, don't abandon your friends. That's good advice in the book of Mishlei, Proverbs 27. However, there's a medrash that he alludes to. He doesn't quote where it's from, but there's a medrash that says, who is your friend and the friend of your father? That's God. So don't go against his words, because you don't like it when people go against your words. There's a lot of assumptions here. So he's saying that, you know why we shouldn't violate the Torah? Because if you say to somebody, don't go to California. I went there last year. I didn't like it. Don't go. And then he goes. You don't like that, do you? You like people to listen to you. If you say, go, hey, get me a cup of coffee. And he says, no, I'm not going to get you a cup of coffee. You get it yourself. You don't like it. So too, if God tells you to do something or not to do something, you should do it. Now, it's a little bit of a problem here. I mean, when I have a friend, I don't necessarily demand so many things of my friend, but it is true that if my friend goes against what I tell him, I'll be upset. So similarly, same thing here. He has a lishnachrin, another interpretation. Chavrecha mamish. It's referring to your friend, but then it doesn't include all mitzvot. It says, well, it includes rov mitzvot, most of the mitzvot, like stealing, robbing. He includes adultery. Incest is not included because incest is a sin against God. Two consenting adults. It's not a crime against each other. But certainly the idea of adultery, that's an offense against the husband. Now, the husband of the woman. So we have two options. One is that there are two different tracks. There's the interpersonal track, which is based on this notion that whatever you hate, don't do to your friend. And then there's the God track, and Hillel doesn't tell us why the God track is a God track. Presumably, we should listen to God. It has nothing to do with this. However, it is interesting in terms of the hierarchy. He seems to say the whole Torah is interpersonal. And then there's the God stuff, that's just commentary. Mitzvahs like kosher and Shabbos, that's his side stuff. However, according to the first interpretation of Rashi, he's saying that all mitzvot, whether they're interpersonal or not interpersonal, it's based on one principle. What you hate, don't do to your friend. Your friend is God. Everything in the Torah God tells you to do or not to do. And therefore, it would be rude to go against what your friend asks you to do or not do. So even when I don't steal, even when I give charity, it's not just that I am someone that is an interpersonal mitzvah. It's really all mitzvot are between me and God. Because no matter what mitzvah it is, God asked me to do it, and it would be rude to God. It would be an insult to God. It would be an affront to God. It would be a disrespect of God if I didn't do it. And notice, it's not just a matter of obedience. Usually you'd say a mitzvah you do for obedience. No, it's a matter of disrespect. The same way it would be disrespectful to you if I did something to you, if I threw a spitball at you, because I don't like people throw spitballs at me. So too, when you violate any mitzvah, interpersonal or not, it's like being disrespectful to God. So according to this comes in two versions. One version is like this. Why shouldn't I steal? Because I don't like people to steal from me. Why should I keep kosher? Because God asks you to keep kosher. If someone asks you to do something, you do it. You don't like when people don't listen to you, so listen to them. In other words, they're both based on the same principle. It's an ethical principle, but it could be that the human being is based on that person I'm offending. I shouldn't go against him because I wouldn't want someone to go against me. But when I do something with God, those mitzvot are because God said to do it, and it's not nice to go against God. So it's two different tracks. Or no, it's all one track. There's a track that you shouldn't go against God. It's disrespectful to go against God. If God asks you to do something, you do it. And whether it's interpersonal or whether it's a divine mitzvah, in every case, it would be disrespectful to God not to do it. So we have two options. One is that all mitzvot are under the same rubric of not disrespecting God. The other is that there are two tracks. Don't disrespect your friend. Whatever he hates, don't do to them. Whatever you hate, don't do to your friend. And whatever God hates, don't do to him either. Whatever you hate, don't do to God. And it's two different tracks. So we have two different possibilities. Let's contrast this idea that everything is all about God. It's all about being nice to God, being ethical toward God. Let's contrast that with another possibility, that it's really all about the human interaction. Really? A mitzvah with God is about the human interaction? Yes. So I can give a simple source, or I can give a more complex one. Let's take a look. We can give a simple source, the source being the verse in Proverbs. The verse in Proverbs says, "Shema b'nei musar avicha." My son, heed the discipline of your father. Don't forsake the instruction of your mother, the Torah, the guidance of your mother. So in other words, one of the ethical principles we have is that if your mother teaches you something, it's probably a good thing. You probably shouldn't go against that. Whatever she teaches you, that's what you should do. If your father teaches you a lesson or admonishment, you should listen to it. They know more. This is not just a matter of honoring parents, which is a separate mitzvah. This is a notion that it makes sense to follow the admonishment, the advice of our parents, those who came before us. In that sense, when we do a mitzvah, even something like kosher, if our parents were kosher, then we are following their footsteps. If I'm, let's say, a convert, I'm following the footsteps of Abraham. If I'm a Baal Tshuva, I repented, so I'm maybe not following my parents, but I'm following my ancestors. And all mitzvot are like that. Whether it's an interpersonal mitzvah or even a God mitzvah, it's a matter of following God's ways. I want to give a more radical source for it, namely the Gemara Pesachim 56a. Rish Lakish says that when Yaakov gathered the sons around him, he was about to tell them about the end of days. He couldn't remember. So he says, maybe there's a problem over here. I feel like God's not with me anymore. Maybe someone here is worshiping idols. So they turned to him and they said, Shema Yisrael, listen here, O Israel. Again, one of the names of Israel, of God, one of the names of Jacob is Israel, his other name. So they said, listen here, Israel, which is the name for Jacob. Listen, our father, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. The Lord is our God. The Lord is one. God is one. So he says, you have one God, we have one God. So then Yaakov was so happy. He said, Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem. Thank God for that. So what does that mean? It means that when a Jew doesn't worship idols, doesn't change his faith or her faith, you know what a Jew is doing? They are being loyal to what we call Yisrael Saba, our great-great-grandfather, Israel, otherwise known as Jacob. We have a loyalty, a fealty to Jacob. Every mitzvah, be it kosher, which is between us and God, be it giving charity or not robbing, which is between us and other people. It's all a matter of Proverbs 1, listening to our parents, following their admonishment, following their Torah, their traditions, and it's all about being respectful to Yisrael Saba, of our ancient grandfather Jacob, and following in his footsteps. So in that sense, all mitzvot are interpersonal. Do we say that all mitzvot are about being nice to God? Or no, all mitzvot are interpersonal. And again, within Rashi, there's a possibility that even if all mitzvot are under the rubric of be nice to God, but it's the ethical aspect of being nice to God, not just obedience to God, but hey, if God asks you to do something, it's not nice to not do it. So we suggested that possibility. Now, when we talk about where interpersonal mitzvot come from, we can talk about them coming from outside or inside. Immanuel Kant was famous for saying that religious people are not really ethical. Why? Because they're not ethical because they're ethical. They're ethical because God says so. Now let's analyze whether that's correct. Rabbi Lichtenstein said, no, we don't check our moral compass at the door as we become Jewish. We do ethical things because we're ethical. We also do them because God says so. But let's see where the ethics come from in the Torah. So one possibility is, again, this week's Parsha Vaetchanan, says, Asita yashar v'atov b'nei Hashem. You know what you should do? Whatever is right and just in the eyes of God, that's what you should do. Let's take a look at this pasuk. Whatever is right and just. Let's see. Vasita. Vasita hayashar. Whatever is right and just in the eyes of God, that's what you should do. Something should be good for you, you'll inherit the land. So it's all about doing what's right in the eyes of God. Here, Emmanuel Kant would have a heyday. You'd say, you see, religious Jews are not doing something out of their own sense of what's right and wrong. But I noticed years ago that if we look at Genesis, find an interesting phenomenon. What's that? The laws of Noah are told to the generation of Noah after God destroyed the world. So I don't understand. What did people do wrong? The land was filled with violence, Hamas. The land was filled with violence. Who told them they can't do violence? Nobody. Now the rabbis try to say, no, the 7 laws of Noah, they're implicit when God said, don't eat from the tree of knowledge. That implied all of morality. There's a God. Once there's a God, morality is implied. But simple reading of the text is that morality was demanded even without laws. Without the laws of Noah, without the laws of Sinai, Cain cannot kill Abel. Violence cannot fill the land. So what does that mean? That morality, the source of morality is inside, is internal. A person should know that. Maybe it's Tselem Elokim, when we're in the image of God. What does that mean? We have we have the right to choose what we want to do. We have the right. We understand the difference between right and wrong. So that's where morality comes from inside. But this pasuk in this week parsha says, no, Basili Yashar Tov, do the right and just in the eyes of God. It's all coming from the outside. So we have these, we've mentioned 4 possibilities. One is that all morality really stems from our moral relationship with God. We have to treat God in a moral fashion. Or no, all morality stems from all morality stems from different sources. Morality stems from being nice to your neighbor. It stems from an ethical sense. And then we have 2 possibilities. Where does that ethical sense come from? Is it from external? Because whatever is right in the eyes of God, that's what's right. Or is it internal, that we're expected to have moral sense even without the commandments? Then there's another possibility where the interpersonal laws stem from. And that is identification of God with man. We know that it says that you're not allowed to hang a person overnight. That there are times when Jewish law calls for hanging, but it's very brief. You're not allowed to leave them overnight. Why not? Because ki kilat elokim talui. He says, because it would be a disgrace to God. Since the human being is made in the image of God, it would be a disgrace to God if you left a human body all night. Rashi compares it to a king who had a son, and the son is hung. If he's arrested for robbery and hung, whoever saw him on the gallows thought the king was hanged. So therefore, if you hang a person, it's as if you're hanging God, because there's an identity between God and man and the human being. So therefore, we understand there's a medrash. I couldn't find it on this occasion, but I believe it's in the Lekach Tov, where it says that you should love your God. You should love your neighbor. I am God. When it says love your neighbor as yourself, it doesn't just say love your neighbor as yourself. It then says, I am God. And the question is, what does that got to do with it? What do you mean, love your neighbor as yourself? I am God. What does that mean? Love your fellow as yourself. I am the Lord. Whoa. What does I am God got to do with loving your neighbor as yourself? So there's a medrash somewhere that says that if you love your neighbor, it's as if you love God too. Because after all, the human being is made in the image of God. So it's the identity of the human being with God So that usually we think there's interpersonal and there's laws with God. Actually, when we relate to someone else, we're also relating to them as a child of God, a image of God, someone godlike, or however you want to describe it. Of course, we have to be careful. Human beings are not God, but there's a debate as to is there a spark of God in every person, or no? Our soul is a created being. Since there's a special thing called a soul that God created, and that's within a person, so you're special because God created the soul within you. Or no, that the soul is somehow related to God. It's a very dangerous and interesting concept. But when you relate to others, to some degree, you are relating to God. Beautiful image that when Abraham had a vision of God, and the question is, what was the vision? What was the vision of God? So if you look at the next verse, he lifted his eyes and he saw three people. You know what the vision of God is? You see people. When you see people, there's an identity between people and God. You know what the root of our interpersonal laws are? The root of our interpersonal laws is the notion that a person inheres within them some sort of similarity to God. It's out of respect to God that I respect others. Because as we said, there's a certain similarity between God and others. So in this sense, all mitzvot are between us and God. Even when I relate to others, it's out of respect to God and the soul that he created within you that I have respect for you. So these are some of the very interesting interpretations about the relationship of the interpersonal and the divine commandments, the commandments between us and God. Just a word of caution, as Sphard-Beth points out that we're talking here about the notion that we should love God the way we should treat God the way we want to be treated. But he says, don't forget, Ani Hashem. It's true, we relate to God as a friend, but there is a difference. God is your friend, but he's also God. So you shouldn't be too friendly with God, but to some degree, God is a friend as well. Rabbi Soloveitchik has this notion that as part of our community, there's me, there's you, there's Knesset Yisrael, the Jewish people, and there's God. God is part of our community. And therefore, I don't just relate to him as master. He said so, so I, sir, yes, sir. Also out of an ethical sense. I treat God as ethically as I would treat everyone else. I wouldn't want to disrespect anyone. Therefore, if he asked me something, I don't want to disrespect him. And therefore, that's the root of all mitzvot, at least according to one interpretation of Rashi. So that are some thoughts on the relationship of interpersonal and divine mitzvot, and the question of what is the root of interpersonal mitzvot. So thanks for joining us here at the Anshei Sphard-Beth Emeth for our discussion of this topic within the Parsha. And join us each week for a discussion of the holidays and more. Thank you.